The repetition of improvisation, you can build those neural pathways to be able to perform, not perform, to put on a different quote unquote character for a different client. How am I going to keep my cup full? If I'm giving to this client in this area, my kid who's now 30, how am I going to keep my cup full while I'm giving? Because I want to give of myself authentically, all of me. When I'm working with a client, it's everything I've got in that moment, 100%. Totally intentional. There's not socks on the floor outside my door and I'm asking him to do that. My car broke down. All those things, I don't need to save space for that anymore.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very impactful, very powerful conversation, which I had mentioned to you yesterday in my teaser about this. Today, I'm joined by my guest, Christiana Frank. She is an expert when it comes to things related to neuroscience, spirituality, mindset, all those critical things which essentially make our lives the way we experience it. Today, I've invited Christiana Frank because of her expertise, because to address one issue which ails almost all business owners everywhere in the world. That is, that experience that we always feel that we are running from pillar to post. We are trying to meet these elusive goals many times at the cost of our family lives, our personal lives, even our health at times. And Christiana and I were chatting about this in one of our conversations where she mentioned that she has many clients who go through this phase. And that's we got in this conversation and I invited her. I thought this will be something which all of us want to listen to, want to learn from. So I am inviting Christiana Frank. Christiana, thank you for joining us. It is amazing. We want to learn a lot from you. Why don't you start by telling a little more about your background to all our listeners?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. And getting to know you has been fabulous. It's been part of my journey, and I'm grateful for that. So my experience, I can bullet point that out because I could get a little long-winded. But as a child, like all of us, we had our stories. So we had, whatever started to develop who we are. And my childhood was a little rocky, like many people. And I had a really hard time feeling a sense of self, like where I belonged in the world. And so what I ended up doing was I thought, you know what? I'm more of a kinesthetic, hands-on learner. I'm going to go be an artist. So I got on a plane at 17, went to New York City, dabbled in the arts, went to some pretty great schools, and ended up on Broadway and did some great things on stage. And I loved it. I had this epiphany, though, or this aha moment that really just changed the trajectory of where I was going, which was now that I figured out a way for myself to be seen and be heard by either putting on different personas or characters or being on stage, repetition, audition, learning to fail hard and get back up, all those things. How can this be taught without somebody going to an art school? And so that's when improvisation first grabbed my interest, because the repetition of improvisation, you can build those neural pathways to be able to perform, not perform, to put on a different quote unquote character for a different client. So what I ended up doing was building companies around that, an improvisational platform. Well, a lot of different things I've come to love about neuroscience, things like, heart math and sound healings and things. There's always been this through line of improv, because at its very foundation, if you have the actual steps on how to do improv, it matters to any human experience you're having. And it invites everyone. So that's basically where I come from. And now, gosh, my clients range from Fortune 500 to best-selling authors to K through 12 school districts, colleges, mental health facilities, corporations. Because at the end of the day, again, human experience is something that we're always practicing and getting better at.
Yeah, that's so true. First of all, thank you. That is impressive. Broadway, I have been to Broadway as an audience. And I am amazed at the final production that comes out. I'm sure hundreds and thousands of hours goes behind that, but it feels so out of the world. So you've done that, you've been there. And then in this current life, when you are coaching and training and supporting so many different kind of clienteles, what is the one thing which is most important for me in this conversation is that amidst all of these clientele, which seem different, you found that common connect, that connect of improvisation. I think our life is almost all about that. You mentioned sales and talking to a customer. I'm a dad. Every single day, I do not know what my little ones are going to pose to me. They at times ask me questions or share some ideas, which I had not even thought of. I'm like, wow, So life every single day is that no one knows what they are up to in this particular day when we start our day. So perfect. Because most of our audience here is going to be people who are either on the cusp of entrepreneurship or people who are small business owners. Let's talk a little about how you manage your personal space, your headspace, how you bring back all those learnings for you as a business owner, not just for your clients.
Right. Sometimes I need somebody to look at me and tell me how to do that, because it's a lot easier to tell other people what to do as far as being able to see the bird's eye view and their blind spots, so to speak. So sometimes I need someone to be able to do that for me. But, it's really important. I've learned, for 22 years, 23, 24, about 25 years, I've been out of the entertainment and into communication, collaboration, and creativity in the different environments. And I have a lot of energy, a ton of energy. And so what I've had to learn over time, more as a metaphor to start with, is how am I going to keep my cup full? If I'm giving to this client on this arena, in this area, my kid who's now 30, but how am I going to keep my cup full while I'm giving? Because I want to give of myself authentically, all of me. When I'm working with a client, it's everything I've got in that moment, 100% totally intentional. And if I can't do that, then I either pause and tell them I'll get back to them. But with all the training I've been through, or the training with improv, you can always find that way to be ready. And that's why I love that as being a foundation of part of what I teach. I will suggest what I notice with working with a lot of entrepreneurs is, one, your organization. So if you're going to find a time for yourself, you need to put that in your calendar, just like you put in your top client or anything in between. And one thing I didn't learn until probably only a handful of years ago was there can be on your calendar 10 minutes where you're just sitting in silence, so you can transition from one client to the next successfully. Mm-hmm. I also coach people, give yourself, so if you need extra time with somebody because there is such a flow going and you don't want it to stop, you're not holding up the next guy, you're not feeling stressed out, you're able to stay completely focused. I think organization is a huge key. Self-awareness, being aware of what your capacity is. Everybody has different capacities. Since my kid has left the house, he's my stepson, but I raised him since he was 13. Since he's been out of the house, I have more capacity. There's not socks on the floor outside, my door, and I'm asking him to do that. There's not, I broke down, my car broke down. There are all those things. I don't need to save space for that anymore. The most thing I think is the most important thing for all of that is a positive attitude. An entrepreneur can look at a challenge as a learning moment, or even a failure as a learning moment, and not get frustrated. Because I'm a true believer that energy exchange between a human and an idea, or a human and another human, is at the top of everything we need to do. Where are you? We know the saying that we all have is, it doesn't matter so much what you do in this world, it matters how you do it. Mm-hmm. So then it goes in, I could go layer on layer with that. So who are you surrounding yourself with? Who do you wake up with in the morning? Who's the first thing you talk to? Who is supporting you? Who's building you up? I just did a podcast this morning, and we were talking about superintendents and educators. Mm-hmm. And they really wanted to highlight the fact that I tell all new educators, do not hang out in the teacher's lounge.
Okay.
Just especially unless it's a really positive place. So, what is your teacher's lounge? Or, like our grandparents always said, who are your ducks? Go find your ducks that fill up your cup, that exchange positive energy. And then it ends up being that no challenge is insurmountable because you have the support or you're already vibrating on a higher level. So, the challenges just become opportunities and become possibilities.
You mentioned some really important things. One of the things which you mentioned is self-awareness. And I'll share my failure there. Many times, and so often, I tend to underestimate the task at hand and overestimate my strength. And then overbook my calendar, overplan it. And at times, even when I'm doing it, I'm like, oh, no, I need to do this. There is a part of me which says, nah, this is not right. And then I would maybe at times there would be days when I would, sort of mentally beat myself up saying, hey, I didn't do this, I didn't do this. At times, I think part of that is also how I have grown up. And a lot of ways in which we grew up, that defines who we are. For example, I remember all my childhood, I was raised in an environment where it was all about kind of, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. You don't stop. You don't take a minute. You don't take a minute to pat your back. You don't take a minute to kind of take a deep breath in. One thing, another one, another one, another. While this seems very productive, you're accomplishing more things, I think this is not effective. You could be super busy. You could be busy all through the day. But is it yielding the result which we want? And all small business owners, all entrepreneurs, you one, I'm one, and our listeners are there. We evaluate our business, our employees, and we should also evaluate us by the results, by the impact, rather than am I grinding 18 hours a day? Somehow that's also becomes celebrated. If you are sleeping less, if you're eating kind of, if you're starving yourself, that's become celebrated. We are celebrating the wrong things, essentially. So that was one of my most important takeaways. And I want to share one quick thing. In this day and age, it becomes so difficult for all of us to unplug from everything and take those 10 minutes out. I'll share with you, this is a conscious thought experiment which I've started practicing. I've always been born and trained in this run productivity environment. But then most of the grand things that I've accomplished in my life, most of the huge success that I've accomplished in my life, those ideas, those inspirations came to me when I was doing nothing. Maybe taking a walk by a lake or hiking a place like all alone, where my brain was like kind of, everywhere and still nowhere. That's when those brilliant ideas came up. They didn't come up when I was super busy driving, my head driving at 80 miles per hour. So both those things are really, really important.
Well, if I was to talk about just a basic little science on that is you're going from task to task to task, and I relate to you 100%. I was raised that way. You go, 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 go. You don't worry about eat. You don't worry about sleep. We now know in modern day society that we do believe, I'm not going to say it's all coming crashing down. I'm just saying that we are all wakening up and we are starting to realize, like, I need to see you. I need to be with you in that room. We're in separate sides of the country, or I would have said, hey, let's do this in person. Yeah. We need to touch each other physically, and people are going, oh, that's like creepy. We're humans. It's not supposed to be creepy or anything more than just human connection and the love of humanity. But that going and going, it ignites our prefrontal cortex. And our prefrontal cortex is our executive functions. And our executive functions are basically like how our brain subconsciously is going, okay, without thinking about it, I'm guessing, Kumar, every morning you will grab at some point your toothpaste and you will unscrew the lid and you'll put it on and you'll brush your teeth. And you're not actually consciously going, left hand, grab, you're just doing this. So if we go back into what you're saying and you are constantly moving, and you're not in stillness, your subconscious is working double time. So your creativity is dampened, your amygdala dampened, because this guy's like, got to get in the car, grab the keys, put it in the... So in sitting in silence, which I will always throw myself under the bus if I know I need to be better. I need to do this better. I need to have a better morning routine, ones that I tell my clients to do. Get up, meditate, write in a journal, use your 5 senses, listen to The Secret, manifest your things, act like they're already here. All that stuff that we know is so impactful for a well-rounded life. But then I get up, grab my cup of coffee, and start answering emails sometimes. And then I'm on the end of my day going, wait. So just being radically aware of that and continuously talking about it with other leaders or non-leaders, entrepreneur, anyone, just to remind ourselves that if we can slow down, use the breath, and really like radical authentic connections, really listen to the person. In improv, I'll bring that back up real quick. Also in heart math it's yes and. I hear you and here's my idea. It allows your body to be able to bring new ideas. And you've created a lot in this lifetime. You've had a lot of new creations. And so I'm not sure if I could toss a question to you, which would say, do you feel, Kumar, do you feel like most of your great ideas have come when you're moving or when you're still? And there's no right or wrong answer there at all. For me, a lot of times I'm walking, but it's like something methodical. I'm not trying to organize my house or something. I'm just walking.
For me, as I said, most of those bright ideas would have come. If I see a pattern, it has to be nature and it has to be me in light motion. So not working out, intense workout in the gym, but in a slow evening walk by a lake, or not a strenuous but just a light hike or a trek up a mountain, and usually all alone. So nature for sure, and some light motion, some light movement. That's what has always done those magical things, sort of my horizons expand when that happens. For almost all my good ideas have come from them. Almost all my inspirations have come from some such moments.
And that's that self-awareness. So you're designing yourself, going, I know when I'm doing this thing in this place, that is where I'm going to get my inspiration. Now I just have to make space for it. So are we going to be like Franklin Convoy and get the calendar out and write it down? Or are you going to set way too many phone alarms so your spouse is like, oh my gosh, make that stop ringing? That's me. I'm like, oh, I have to do something. And it stinks when you don't set what the alarm is for and it just says alarm and you're like, oh no, I forgot to write down what I'm supposed to do. But I also think a huge piece of this is knowing what your values are, and those can change. Knowing what your goals are, and those can change because you're taking in more information. In my opinion, if you're doing the best you can at this human existence, you are trying to learn and be with as many people and ideas as possible, and then pull them together, share it with the world, and give them something new. But it also comes from a place of your values and your goals, even if they change, to create that passion and that purpose. And then blossoms out the word you brought in the beginning, which is spirituality.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be God. It can be energy. It's whatever it is for that person. Mm-hmm. But that's where that spirituality comes. And then you're just feeding values and goals with your spirituality. And it's a beautiful energy exchange.
I'll share with me what spirituality, the way I relate to it. It is a word which many times, everyone has their own understanding of it. And there is something which saddens me that at times there's not a word. I think we should be using it much more often than we do. We don't. My sense of spirituality is that in my deepest meditations, I've realized that there is this space of calmness within me, this space of quietude within me, which is unperturbed by anything happening in this world. It is sort of, there is no better way of describing it. It is sort of whole, absolute, complete. I can name it God, I can name it whatever I want to, but it is that experience for me. Whenever in my meditations or whenever in any of my practices, I'm able to touch that space of quietude. It sort of, does something to me. It brings out the real me, the true me, which at times gets bogged down by the to-dos, by the emails, by the meetings and whatnot. So that space is spirituality for me. How would you define it? What would be your sort of definition or understanding of it?
So my definition, I'll tell you, those two different. My definition and understanding for me personal might be two different things. Mm-hmm. My definition of what I've always thought spirituality would be is what you just explained it to be, which would be a sense of calm. And I work towards that a lot. So I am always working on meditating with breath. And I used to beat myself up. In college, they would have us sit in a room and try to meditate. And I would just want to run for my life because I'm such a fast mover. I learned as I got older. I mean, I'm 50 now and I hope to learn a lot more. But sometime just in the last 10 years, I've learned that my spirituality is almost like a moving meditation. I feel the closest to God, to energy, to the word spirituality when I'm working with people and I'm being of assistance to people.
Right.
I discouraged myself from letting that be my answer for many years. And then just in the last 10 years, I said, you know what? That's my answer. Well, a lot of people, I still do try to sit still, and I can for about 20 minutes. And I can get there in my third eye, but it's not as impactful for me as just really finding a human or a group of humans and connecting with them and building on shared space.
Let's talk a little about that. We talked about spirituality. We talked about how you perceive it and how you relate to it and how I relate to it. So what happened? Was it a certain moment or was it a series of things that happened that led you to realize that this interacting with people, making people shine, smile, eliminating people, how did you end up finding that is what it is for you?
You know, I've been looking into that question a lot the last 2 months. And so there's been pivotal parts in my life. And it started at a young age where I found it very beneficial in my environment to be able to change the attitude in the room. So I got very skilled, almost like a superpower, right? So this isn't a victim speech or anything of that nature. Because like I said in the beginning, we all have these things that have happened to us in our youth. And some of us or some people will go, oh, poor me, poor me. And other people, I like to design them and going, when 0 to 7, your brain is developing. There are things that happen that can create your superpower. My quote unquote superpower ended up being that I can walk into a room and change the environment. And at first it was like, oh, that's weird that a little kid has to do that or whatever the story. But as I got older, I found it to be something that worked with my job. Auditions, working with clients, they're not feeling good, whatever's going on, I can change that reality for them. Then as I got more seasoned, I started realizing I don't want to change everybody's reality. That's their world. Let them have their space. But just recently, not recently, probably in the last 15, 20 years, I have been, people walk up to me and tell me very personal things, people out of the blue. And I didn't know what to do about that when I was younger. Now, more skilled. Do you want to talk about it? And the next thing you know, I'm either assisting someone, they're assisting me, or we're assisting an idea. And that's my religion. That's my spirituality.
That's beautiful. So would you say that your self-awareness, maybe even when you were growing up, is led you to kind of, find this for you? Because at times I feel that there are so many things in many of our lives where maybe all we need to do is to look inside rather than look outside for 100 answers. So would you say that self-awareness was the key for you, or was it like just one moment or one particular thing that you remember again? No?
It's definitely self-awareness, and then aligning my values, and then seeing how they fit in with my goals, and then putting together a perfect dance between all of those. Because for each person, I'm a true believer that it's going to be different for each person.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to you in your youth, or whatever happened to you at the stop sign 5 minutes ago. I've always been fascinated my whole life on human behavior. When I was very young, I can't remember the specific situation, but I remember seeing 2 adults, and one of them made one choice and one of them made the other choice. And I was really young, like 8 or 9. And I remember thinking they both had the same amount of information, and they both went in 2 different opposite sides. What is that?
Yeah.
And so I think I've lived my life going, why does we all hit a fork in the road and Kumar goes right and I go left? And that's such a beautiful thing. Yeah. What happened in your life that made you take a right? Like, I want to know about that. Maybe I'll take a right next time.
Yeah.
So that's where I got the fascination. It's a daily look for me everywhere I go. I'm constantly talking to people and figuring out why they make the choices they do.
You know what? I think that especially with artificial intelligence and these things, robotics becoming everyday thing for all of us, I think this connection is the only sort of, last strand of humanity, that still makes us or keeps us human. They might make the best robots or best artificial intelligence, but this connection, I think, is only privy to humans. That's how I feel about it. This is what defines we as the species, as the human species. Christiana, we are towards the end of our conversation, so I'm just going to ask you a couple quick questions. Maybe, let's do.
It's hard not to expand on that last one, but just
Okay, please,
can
please.
I just say one?
Yeah, please.
I know.
Yeah.
It'll turn into 5 hours. It's the hierarchy of needs that we have, and it's like, I don't know if I just want to say one thing, and I don't know what my face looked like when you said AI. I worry. I'm not stressed, but I'm concerned. I'll say that. The I love yous to strangers, you don't have to be in love with people. All this society has made it very goofy and strange and scary for people to be close and connected. And it's so important. And I think it's extremely important for each of us to look inside ourselves and say, how much can I give to humanity as far as being vulnerable and allowing people to see my heart and giving other people permission to do that? The more of us that do and give other people permission, the whole planet will shift.
Yeah.
It will shift. And I'm sorry I jumped on your words.
No, perfect. Because for our listeners, I just wanted to, because we don't have such experts every single day, I'll ask you a couple quick questions. And what I'm expecting for my listeners, for our listeners here, is actionable points, in terms of things that I can start implementing today. So first thing, what would be, maybe an ideal morning routine or an ideal way to kickstart our mornings, and with this whole spirituality, mindset, and transformational perspective?
I'm going to tell you the science behind it, and I'm going to tell you what I think is right, and then I'm going to tell you I'm a maid with a dirty house right now, so I will throw myself under the bus. I know for a fact, based on studies and science and working with a lot of my clients, is if you lay down, I'm actually going to take you to the night before. If you lay down in bed the night right before you go to sleep, and I say keep your palms up and socks off your feet, that's a whole nother podcast. And you're going to sit there, close your eyes or open your eyes. You give yourself 30 seconds. Better to do 20 minutes, but give yourself 30 seconds. Do all 5 senses, see, touch, taste, smell. What you need, yourself in your meeting tomorrow, whatever's important to you in your head, see it, feel it, touch it, taste it, know it, go to sleep. When you wake up, do not get out of bed. Sit there for another 30 seconds. Don't get water. Don't do anything. Just wake up so you can lock it in. Wake up, see all 5 senses again and see it. So I work with a lot of people if they've got a big speaking engagement or maybe they're really nervous about a meeting. So you visualize. Visualization and positive self-talk is the way to raise that vibration and basically nail whatever you want to get done. But see it as much as you possibly can. Yes, if I could sit longer than 20 minutes, it'd even be better. Mm-hmm. But even for the beginners, 30 seconds at night, 30 seconds in the morning. Try to do at least 3 minutes. And then get up, brush your teeth.
30 seconds or even 3 minutes, I think, in a 24-hour work day, in a 24-hour day, I think 30 seconds, 3 minutes is the least that each of us deserve for ourselves. And I think that's beautiful. Let me just jump in one more question. You've talked a lot about improv. You have a lot of experience with improv. Can you say give us a quick tip, which say, on a day that I'm feeling low, on a day that things are not going okay, is there some quick improv technique which I can do in my head to shift my paradigm from where I am at?
Yes. I think this is going to answer your question, but I kind of want to one-up you on it. I want to yes and you, which means I'm hearing what you're saying. And I want to bring it up, which is an improv rule. This is my favorite improv rule of all. Make those around you look good. If you can take the focus off of yourself and figure out, and this can be done in your own mind before you go into that meeting, go, how am I going to make the guy hiring me look good? I'm not talking about brown nosing anyone. I'm talking about authentically helping lift someone up. You look amazing from the watcher. So most of my success or the success of my clients has been making those around me look good. And then we just kind of get taken with their little journey. But making people look good is something to always visualize. Another thing would be yes and, which you can find a lot of videos on that, and I'll keep it short. When somebody makes a statement, you don't have to say yes and, but you literally listen to them, you don't agree with what they're saying, but acknowledge it and then add in your own key points. So that's creating ideas. So knowing the yes and, making others look good, that shouldn't be improv. That should just be life. Alan Alda's Center for Science, he said that improv is basically needed in every human behavior. He has a lot of resources on this.
You know what? While you were mentioning both of these techniques which we can do, there's one commonality underneath that which I'm seeing is getting a little out of myself, not just me, becoming present and alive. Only then I acknowledge the other person. Only then I'm like, it's not just about me. It's about how I can maybe bring a smile to your face or transform you today or transform this second for you. And that's so powerful. Where can people find you? How can people connect to you?
I am everywhere. Well, I'm not everywhere. I've been back on social media again. I took a deep break. But my website is christianafrank.com. Not Christina. I do have a really sweet kids business that's been going called kidscapeproductions.com, which is kids and social skills. And I just am revisiting and relaunching my podcast, Deliberate Connections. That's going to be coming out, and I'm hoping to have you as a guest, Kumar. We don't usually video, but maybe you're teaching me something about video. Well, video is super impactful.
Thank you.
And I thank you so much for having me. There's so many different, I hope we can do this again too, because each of the things we talked about, I love doing interactive things. So each of the things we're talking about, I can also give a activity or a neuroscience activity for your entrepreneurs so they can practice with another person or practice with themselves. And if we're on the screen like this, you and I can model that.
I think I'm up for that. I think, when I see something, the learning is much, much better. So of course, this conversation, we were talking for like 30 minutes, a little over 30 minutes, but it felt like I could have gone on, in this conversation. It just feels like I've just scratched the surface. But then let's do that again. And to all my listeners, all my viewers, we were talking with Christiana Frank. Christiana is still here. I want to thank her on my behalf for this amazing conversation. And let's start at least with one of the things that she talked about today. Maybe, if nothing, the 30 seconds morning and the 30 seconds night before routine, or yes, and as a whole paradigm in life, making others shine. I think those are my most important 3 takeaways. I would love to listen from you. What are your most important takeaways from this conversation? Thank you very much for listening to this conversation, watching this if you're watching it on YouTube. Connect with me on imkumarv.com, and we had Christiana Frank. You can connect with her at christianafrank.com. Thank you very much.